Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianza. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Kern. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. It feels like a 2-episode a week pod. It's really not, though, because last week was a 0-episode week. It is a visual episode of ARR today. One, because of Savant trivia later, that's a tease. But also right now, there's a lot of reason to be on the YouTube page. As you see behind me, we have a special guest. Not joining us, but very much observing in the room with me. Theo, not Theo Epstein, but Theo the cat is in my room right now. You can see him on my Zoom screen. So that's a major reason to check out the ARR YouTube if you're not listening on that platform.
Yeah, and you know, I think he fits in pretty well. On
he was named after an executive, like he has baseball roots.
Yes, indeed, and yeah, like also this is the first time we've probably had natural light in our through our windows in a while. We've been doing a lot of night pods, so good to good to get back to the Sunday morning specials.
I also got baseball on right in front of me. We got the London series going on. Phillies are up 1-0 in the bottom of the fourth. Jose Quintana's on the mound. Edmundo Sosa is at the plate, I believe that is. That sure is.
Quite the low scoring affair for London. They've had some.
I know. What was up with 2019?
Yeah, that was a time. 6-6 after the first inning. That was.
I will say, I was looking at the league wide OPS this year, I believe is still below 700.
Correct.
Yeah. What is it right now? I was like 698 last I checked, or something like that.
Last I checked, I think it was down to like 693.
It's 699. So we're getting up there. I feel like we just need to be at a constant state of 725.
725 is the spot.
That's I like that number. I think it makes sense. Like when I see someone with a 725 OPS, like no matter what the league OPS is, I think, yeah, that's league average. That's a 100 OPS plus hitter for sure.
I reflect positively on the 2021 season largely because it was a league OPS of 728.
Yeah, this is the analytical breakdown. We're breaking down our most ideal league-wide OPSs.
Yeah, when can a 735 OPS league-wide OPS boy and 715 league-wide OPS girl get along?
Probably never.
What I'm saying?
Yeah.
2019
boy and 2014 girl.
Yeah, some girls wanted to be
league OPS is not
again.
Not any other context.
Yeah, in no other context. Yeah, some girls want it to be 1968 again. It's just like, you gotta you just gotta adjust. You gotta find your match. Maybe
I was looking at some league trends. I know there's a tough transition here, but the league-wide home run to fly ball ratio on fly balls to straightaway and the opposite field are like at convincing StatCast era lows.
Interesting. Yeah.
Hang on, I'm pulling up the numbers right now because I was looking into this yesterday. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is going on with offense because it's basically the same when you look at pulled fly balls. I think pulled fly balls make up a larger percent of all home runs this year compared to other years. The league wide home run to fly ball ratio on fly balls to the opposite field and straightaway is 6.2%. It's the second lowest in the StatCast era, behind only 2015, which was the first year of the StatCast era, and also maybe the weakest offensive year since 2023 was 8.1%. So we're down over 2% this year, or almost 2% this year, rather, in home run to fly ball ratio to straightaway, center field, as well as the opposite field. So that's maybe a little cause for concern, but let me check the number of home runs that were pulled, because that's the one that I also really picked up on yesterday that I had some takeaways from.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because usually when we look at the state of or the state of the baseball, not baseball, but the state of the baseball, because obviously we know it's changed over the years. You kind of like home run to fly ball ratio is usually like the number one spot to look at, but if it's varying based on direction, then I wonder what's going on. It must have to do with what the players are doing because the ball's not going to change when it's pulled versus when it's hit straight away or hit to the opposite field. So maybe they were listening to ARR this offseason and
Maybe.
listening to us complimenting all the people that pulled their fly balls.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe this is in part a philosophy change, but it's probably also a result of whatever the state of the baseball might be. In 2024, 68.5% of all home runs that have been hit this year have been pulled. The previous StatCast era high was 65.4%, which a 3% difference might not sound that big, but when we're talking about this large of a sample size, that's pretty huge. The low was it's in 2019, which was 58.5%, but that also makes sense because the ball was flying out everywhere that year. So yeah, pulled fly balls are more in now that they have been ever, at least in the Statcast era, but I would imagine probably ever. That was an interesting trend that I picked up on, and I wonder if there's any specific cause for that relating to potentially the manufacturing of the baseballs.
It's very interesting indeed. Just in general, the home run to fly ball ratio is down 1.9% from what it was last year when offense was kind of more at a normal spot. So it's 10.8% now, the home run to fly ball ratio. And with that, that being said, I think that may correlate with the fact that a higher percentage of fly balls or a higher percentage of home runs are pulled home runs. And it's probably because when the ball is going to the deeper part of the ballpark, it's just not going out as many times. So with less home runs, there probably has to be a higher percentage of home runs going to shorter ends of the ballpark if the ball is not going as far. So yeah. I mean, I imagine the baseball is a little bit different this year because the way the offense has fluctuated year after year, I feel like it's been the league wide OPS has changed like 30 points or so almost every year,
Mhm.
or at least every full year. So I wonder what's going on with that. It's just it doesn't really have anything to do with the players. It can't change that much year to year if it's all on the players.
I'm curious if like maybe the early season stuff has anything to do with it because like offense does tend to be down in April and May and then go up later. But in 2022, the league wide percent of home runs that were pulled from opening day through June 9th, which is the day we're recording on today, was only 64.9%, and it ended at 65.4%. So no, this sounds like it's an actual sustainable trend that might keep up the rest of the year, which could provide a lot of interesting takeaways. I know that the conspiracy that I've heard, I think it was Pete Alonso who like threw this out there a few years ago. He said that like the league alters the balls depending on the incoming free agent class, whether it's hitter heavy or pitcher heavy. They make it, a little more dead when it's a hitter class and more lively when it's a pitcher class. I mean, that's really all a theory, and I don't have any evidence to back that other than, whatever league-wide offense was in previous years with the free agent classes. It is probably more hitter friendly this year. You have Juan Soto, Pete Alonso. The pitchers looked pretty good, but then a lot of them got extended. But who knows?
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think, but I feel like, or at least maybe this is my optimistic point of view, but I feel like teams would know better and they know about league-wide stats and league-wide trends,
Some
and
teams,
some teams do, maybe like 20 out of 30,
yeah.
um, but you know, I feel like, teams were looking at pitchers after like probably heading into the 2020 season and being like, yeah, the home run to fly ball ratio is not going to be as high because the baseballs are not going to be that you know uh, just bulbously juiced. It's just crazy. um but uh but yeah, like and also, if you're listening and wondering why we're talking about pulled home runs and not opposite field home runs, it does make sense to be confused about that because, opposite field home runs, hypothetically, it's the same distance required to have a home run typically. But usually with pulled home runs, guys just hit it harder when they pull it.
It's also
That's
just easier to generate power when you're in front of the ball.
yeah, that's just the league. That's the league trend there. And also, rarely is an opposite field home run like directly down the line, whereas a pulled home run can be down the line all the time. There's just more control that happens there. If someone's hitting it to the opposite field and deep, usually it's a little bit further away from the line, which is where it's a deeper end of the ballpark and less likely to go out. So
I
that's kind of
wonder.
why we look at the pulled home runs and not the opposite field home runs.
Yeah, it could also just be simply teams are teaching their hitters to pull the ball more, especially in the air, because that is the most effective way to hit a home run on a fly ball. I wonder if like there is a rise in the percent of fly balls being pulled, because that could also be an indicator of maybe a philosophy change around the league. Um, I mean, it's interesting. So, as of currently, 26.3% of all fly balls that have been hit this year have been pulled. That is the fourth most in any year throughout the StatCast era. 2023 was the highest at 27%. That's 2020 at 26.7%, 2022 at 26.4%, and then 2024 is at 26.3%. So all four of the top 4 years are within 0.7% of each other. So definitely not a very specific thing this year, but I think there has been a general rise. It's post-pandemic, we'll just say.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and part
Because
of it is just
we're now kind of reaching the point where like the pandemic is like the halfway point between the start of the Statcast era and now. So there's a pretty even split of pre-pandemic data and post-pandemic data in the Statcast data. So that's pretty interesting.
yeah, true. Yeah, 2020 baseball season was quite a movie. It's
I
just
also just kind of
weird.
appreciate how, as a society, we've started using the pandemic as like a unit of measurement for time.
Oh yeah, no,
Like
yeah,
I was at work and someone asked me how long I had had my beard, and I said this was actually pre-pandemic, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's a long time."
yeah. I think about I think about the year 2019, and I'm just like, that's a whole nother world. That's just
It quite literally is a whole nother world. I mean, it is for us personally because that happened to be the year that Chris and I both graduated high school. So not only did it represent the last, normal year before the world changed around us, but it also was a big transition in our lives.
yeah.
Um,
Well, also like because I know we're coming up on 5 years of this being a podcast or being a show. And like thinking back of like October 2019, that's just a way different time, like just a way different time. So
yeah.
it's weird to just think about that, like doing something actively, every week since 2019 just feels like a way longer time than if
And
it,
it's been like pretty consistent too.
yeah.
Like, what is the longest we've gone without a pod? I think it was during the lockout, right?
Yeah, yeah, probably about a month. Like I
Yeah.
think we had an episode where we interviewed Amy Crawford, our professor, and then I think we were already busy enough and there was nothing going on in the MLB, so we never like scheduled anything and we didn't really have a routine during the
Yeah. Another thing that just feels like such a different time was the lockout.
yeah, that was it's weird. I kind of
It
easily
feels
forget
like
about
it
that.
the lockout was very long. It lasted like close to 100 days. I remember like 20 minutes worth of content, and it was all that one night in Miami.
Yeah, you know what actually reminds me about the lockout is on our Above Replacement Radio Instagram, we I think we follow like Jose Ramirez, and Jose Ramirez's Instagram is still that the
Is it actually? It's
faceless,
still like the faceless image.
it's
I
still the
remember
faceless image.
I changed my Twitter profile picture at the time that my Twitter profile picture was me at I think it was Edgar Martinez's, or no, it was Napoli's Hall of Fame plaque. I was wearing an Edgar jersey, and I had a friend of mine like Photoshop it so it was instead of my face, it was the faceless image.
Yeah, that was quite the time when
Yeah.
players took to social media for that stuff. Yeah, that was fun.
It was that what a crazy time because it's like um teams couldn't like players couldn't like use their team trainers or any team resources. So like if they were injured, they had to go somewhere else, which is crazy. Um this story is not aged well, but like Ibe Mizuhara like quit his job with the Angels so that he could remain in contact with Shohei Ohtani during the lockout and then got rehired as soon as it was over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard stories of like, guys who worked on the team were like friends with players and then they just couldn't communicate for 3 months.
Yeah.
It was quite a definitely an interesting time, but it's very easily forgettable. Probably because it never really interfered that much with the season, but
No, I mean we lost a week of games that were later made up.
right, right. Who could forget those scheduled doubleheaders
The
that were
the scheduled double headers in like Toronto as well.
yeah.
Like a place that normally would not hold double headers because it's not necessary. Also, the regular season ending on a Wednesday, I think it was.
Yeah, I remember
I think the good thing that the lockout brought upon us was um like it did change up the playoff schedule quite a bit because I remember the World Series used to start on like a Tuesday every year. And during the lockout, because everything was changed, they were like, you know what, let's just start it on Friday. And I think
right.
that's how it's been ever since. And or maybe it's not. No, I think they went back because I didn't the Rangers win on a Sunday night on game five?
Um Possible, but I'm pretty sure game one was a Friday because I remember coming back from a
I
high
think it
school
was
football
two.
game.
I think it was two.
Yeah, I was I was writing a high school football game story and
Yeah,
Adolis
okay.
Garcia just put it over the wall.
To be fair, I mean, I couldn't tell you what day the World Series ended on last year because my life was very different and I had no sense of what day it was. From all of like May, like after we graduated college until January, I had no sense of what day it was because I went from graduating and then, chilling at home and then going on a road trip and then doing an internship for 2 months where I was working 7 days a week with the same schedule and then unemployment and then starting a full-time job.
Yeah, I was kind of there for a few months too.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, there's day games today. It's either like Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday or Sunday.
Yep.
It's all night games. It's got to be a Monday or Tuesday, maybe a
Or maybe a
Friday.
Friday if the Cubs are on the road.
Yeah. Um, yeah, but what we're talking, yeah, the playoff
A
schedule. Oh yeah,
lockout. Yeah.
and then the first like true wild card weekend was started on a Friday, and that was
Yep,
cool.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was so fun.
That was cool.
Yeah, you get a four, you get there was like so many four game.
4 game Friday to start the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but now it's to Tuesdays like permanently, which is okay,
Yeah.
but I guess it makes the LDSs better, better schedule wise. But yeah, but yeah, 2022 was definitely an interesting year. Just started a week late, ended 3 days late, and then got going quickly. Um,
I remember the funniest thing that came from that was for so many years, for whatever reason, they just kept scheduling the Angels to be in Oakland on opening day. They did it for like 4 straight years or something like that, from like 20, like 19, maybe 18 through 21 or something like that. Because they definitely did in 21, they definitely did in 20.
they definitely
Um,
did it in 2018 because I remember that was Ohtani's pitching debut.
yes. And I'm pretty sure they did it as well in 2019. But 2022, they finally like didn't have it. They were somewhere else. And then because the season got pushed back, it ended up happening again.
That's hilarious. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure they did it in 2023 again as well.
who could forget the opener in 2020? It was the first game
Dude,
of the extra runner.
the Hobie Milner game.
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
you were at my house and yeah, it was the first Ghost Runner game. And the Angels, I think, scored their run, and the A's scored their run, but then they loaded the bases and they took their pitcher out to bring in Hobie Milner to face Matt Olson. And first pitch, he hits like a 430-foot grand slam to win the game
It
in a
just
sea of no one.
it just had all the elements because it was, probably, 1:30 a.m. or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Just objectively. And we knew it was going to be, first extra runner and then also probably first walk off in the pandemic when you're not allowed to mob your teammates. So
Yep.
just
The
the fact
best
that it
the
all,
best 2020 highlight forever will be, I believe it was Trent Grisham hitting a walk-off home run against the Giants at Oracle Park in the seventh inning because it was a scheduled doubleheader and doubleheaders were 7 innings for a couple of years there.
oh yeah, that was the best. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
hilarious because they had to be home. Yeah, just
Like
amazing,
that's
amazing
the best
times.
time capsule you can imagine for 2020. It's like here's a guy hitting not in his home ballpark, but his team he's wearing the road jerseys, but his team is the home team, even though they're in the other team's ballpark. There's no fans. It's the seventh inning. They're down two, and he hits a home run to win the game, and that's it. And that's the game.
Yeah, it's so funny. And also, yeah, like the playoffs where it's, Petco Park and it's the Rays in their home uniforms against
Yeah.
the Astros.
Here's
And
one of the biggest moments in Tampa Bay Rays franchise history. Mike Brasso hits a go-ahead home run in the eighth inning to put the Rays on top in game five in the eighth inning against the Yankees. There was history with these two early in the season when Chapman almost hit Brasso in the face and he hits into the second row with nobody.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I will stand my ground arguing for the 2020 playoffs. They might have been the best playoffs of our lifetimes. Legit. I don't think there's an argument against it. I mean, it was loaded with moments. If the 2020 playoffs had crowds, they would be known as the greatest playoffs ever because
Yeah.
there was obviously the Mike Brasso home run that would have been at Tropicana if that was
Carlos Correa hit a walk-off home run. But
would it, that
would that have been gone in Houston though? It was the dead center.
um who knows? I mean, no, obviously no more Towels Hill, but um let's just say it would have.
Fine.
I think
Randy
it was a bomb.
Rosarena like would have grown in size in terms of his legend status like more than it already did.
Yeah, and who could forget Game 4 of the World Series, where I mean
Brett Phillips,
that
yeah.
moment in front of a crowd. I mean, Tropicana, I would imagine they'd be able to sell that
They
out.
could have gotten like 30,000 fans.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. That would have been a moment we reflect on now,
All right,
but
Chris,
I
name
don't think
off the
we
top of
do.
your head, name your favorite moment from the Braves Marlins NLDS.
Um, when the Marlins were up 4-0 in the first, and yeah, I don't really remember too much after that.
Yeah, that was the most forgettable series.
And we
Maybe
were
about maybe.
we
Yeah.
were like, this is going to be a great series. We were like, the Marlins are a
I'm
team to
pretty
look
sure I
out
took the
for.
Marlins.
I believe you did as well. I had Braves, but I had them in five,
Yeah,
and
well,
they
because the
just
Marlins
mopped
had
the
never
floor with
lost a
them.
playoff series before then, and it was like we have to continue the meme.
Yeah, exactly. But because we were confident that the Cubs were going to be the Marlins, and then
Yeah.
they did not come close to doing that. Um, but yeah, hopefully. And by the way, hopefully we can get some more 3-game series out of these wild cards because you know
Oh my God, yeah.
it's
We need it so bad. Was there a single one last year?
mm,
I think they
no,
were all sweeps, right?
yeah, no, there are no 3-game
Yeah,
series.
there's been what, three in the 3 years that they've done it. It was the Padres Cardinals in 2020, which was also a really good series.
Yeah,
The
three
A's
out of
and White Sox
16.
in 2020, and then the Mets and Padres. The Padres have been involved in two out of the three.
Yeah, so 3 out of 16 have gone to three,
Yeah, that's
which
embarrassing.
I feel like is just poor odds. But
It
as it
could just be like
continues
a
happening,
mentality thing. Like you play 162 games and you lose one, and all of a sudden your season's on the line.
right? Because I feel like a lot of those games, at least last year, those game twos just didn't feel that competitive. Like
No.
Rays Rangers, I believe the
There
Rangers.
was nothing about Rays Rangers that was ever competitive.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Brewers Diamondbacks was kind of competitive. Like the Brewers had some opportunities that they just didn't
That's
They
true.
just
I
didn't
don't.
convert on. Twins and Blue Jays was not,
Yeah, Blue Jays was close, but I don't think they ever had a lead.
and Phillies and Marlins was never going to be a series.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was the easiest
Exactly.
sweep of all time.
Right. For sure. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully that changes a bit this year. 'Cause yeah, I remember they had, it was supposed to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then there was no Thursday games. And then there was also no Friday games because they needed the break
Yep.
between because they would have figured they would have had a game three somewhere, but then the LDS has started on Saturday.
I remember for that Saturday, I was in Tampa for a wedding, and the Orioles Rangers game was the first scheduled game of the day. It was at like 3 o'clock. They had to move it back because of rain. And the hotel we were at had this like bar with a bunch of TVs, and I was like, oh, I'll just watch the game out here. And then I remembered it was a Saturday in the fall in the South, and I was like, oh, they don't even know baseball is being played today here.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate. That is
Yeah,
very
so I had to go
unfortunate.
up to the room to watch it.
Yeah, I actually had it, or no, I did not have it on this TV, but that was the day I moved in to my place in Virginia.
Right.
But I did wear an Orioles shirt that day, the one Orioles shirt I own that we got from Saber
The
50.
Saber 50.
And
Yeah, great
also
shirt.
obviously shout out the most comfortable shirt I
Yeah,
do own,
no,
if I say so
great
myself.
shirt.
Um,
I will say it every time.
and I was at the checkout at Target, and a guy commented, he was like, "Ah, tough game today." And I was like, "Ah, yeah, we'll be fight, we'll be fighting."
Yeah. Yeah, man,
Well,
I've been waiting all my life for another Orioles playoff game.
yeah. Uh, I I was caught off guard. If I wasn't caught off guard, I would have played out the lie like really, really well. But I was not prepared.
Yeah.
I should have been
Well, because you
more
could, I mean,
prepared.
yeah, like you could have talked to circles around that guy about the Orioles, even if you're a Red Sox fan.
Oh, for sure. I could have been like, well, if they don't get it done this year, I know they'll be back. I know they'll be back.
Yeah.
All the
Who
cliche stuff.
pitched who pitched game one for them? Was it Bradish? It was Bradish, yeah.
Yeah, it was Bradish then
But yeah,
Rodriguez.
Bradish didn't have his best stuff today.
Oh yeah. Well,
Hopefully
I
Gray
should.
Rat will get him tomorrow.
Well, I think what I immediately thought of when I left that Target was like, oh, I can't believe they tried to steal second there. They're down two. That runs meaningless. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
That is what happened. I remember that.
Um, or I forget if they were down two or down one, but they did get
Yeah.
thrown out at second.
Jonah Heim had a big caught stealing.
Yes, get caught stealing above averaged there.
Mhm.
Um,
The
yeah,
coolest thing about the Rangers World Series rings is that it's like they went undefeated on the road, and if you take the first letter of their opponents, it spells out the word road.
yeah, it's
So it said
crazy.
road domination with the Rays logo, the Orioles logo, the Astros logo, and the Diamondbacks logo, which is insane that it works out like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love
That was
that for them.
crazy.
It was crazy. Um, yeah, I mean, we've started off the show well, but do we want to get into our segment of the morning?
Yeah, I guess we could talk about baseball that's being played this year and not 4 years ago during a global health crisis.
Yes. Um, but yeah, we figured we'd kind of talk about some players and teams that are trending in directions that we probably weren't expecting them to trend in. And we are labeling this segment the Legit-mus Test. Uh, not not the litmus test, but the Legit-mus Test. Um, because yeah, I feel like there's just we're kind of um out of the contender or pretender or contender area of the baseball season. We're more than a third of the way through, so I feel like teams are kind of solidifying themselves and players are kind of solidifying themselves, but uh, obviously fall offs happen. So yeah, we're just gonna kind of talk about three players or teams uh that are kind of on an unusual track right now and see how legit it is. So I kind of selected three teams to talk about. Daniel selected three players to talk about. Um, do you want to ask me about your first player?
Sure, I'll talk to you about my first player. This is a guy that, I remember asking myself in 2019, did he just have a career year? Is he ever going to top this? And my definitive answer was yes. I don't think he ever does this again. But Ketel Marte has been very impressive this year. I believe he's top 10 among all qualifying position players in F4 this season. He has a career high by like 2 miles an hour in average exit velocity. He is hitting the ball on the ground a lot more, but some of his batted ball metrics look very nice. To give you an idea, Ketel Marte is currently slashing 282, 340, 508 for a 135 weighted runs created plus. He also has a 307 BABIP, so it's not terribly high. A sub 20% strikeout rate, 5.1 defensive runs above average, and 0.2 BSR. He ranks ninth among qualified position players in F4. So, what is your Legit-mus thought on Ketel Marte this season?
Yeah, Ketel Marte, this is interesting because yeah, all that underlying stuff is as you mentioned, like really going in the right direction for him. Career high average exit velocity, career high barrel rate, as I'm seeing right here. And those are career highs. His whole career has lasted in the StatCast era. So these are, lots of seasons that we're talking about. And yeah, like so the underlying stuff is looking fantastic. I'm wondering if that F4 is gonna hold up because it says Baseball Savant has him at 8 outs above average this year, which is pretty nuts, especially at this point in the year. And he only had one total out above average in 2023, and he had -3 in 2022. Let's see if it ever got worse. It was -6 in 2021.
Yeah, but he's
So
at eight this year.
he's never been this good defensively according to StatCast. So I'm sure that, him being at 8 outs above average now, that would put him at a pace of like he'd be projected to have like 20 outs above average by the end of the season. I'm not sure that's going to happen, but based on the offense, I feel like that offense can definitely hold up. He's at an 848 OPS right now. I don't see that as unrealistic for the long term for Ketel Marte. I just don't think his defensive status is going to necessarily hold up. I can see it being positive by the end of the year, but I don't think he's going to keep this pace up. So if we're kind of rating 1 through 10, with 10 being the most legit, I would say this is probably a 7 on the Legit-mus scale. I think he can hold up this offense to a degree, and especially his OPS is higher than last year in a much less offensive environment. I don't have the league adjusted statistics in front of me, but I imagine it's much better.
Where would the Diamondbacks be without him? Because I mean, they were obviously counting on a lot of production from Corbin Carroll that they just simply have not gotten. They've gotten some good offensive production from Christian Walker as per usual. Jock Peterson has been excellent for them, and not as many plate appearances, but still very good. The pitching has not been what we hoped it would be, especially on the starting front. Zach Gallen's been injured. Jordan Montgomery has struggled. Eduardo Rodriguez has still not thrown a pitch. Merrill Kelly has been injured.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of in a year of down years for the Diamondbacks, Ketel Marte just kind of seems to be the shining light in the organization right now. We kind of expected some fallback from the Diamondbacks, and it's I don't think it's gone anything. It hasn't gone in a crazy bad direction. They can obviously still bounce back from this, but with what Marte is doing, there's reason to believe that that offense can get going. And Marte, by the way, we talk about everything he's doing. He's underperforming his expected metrics right now, so he could
Yeah.
he could easily get better, or have results be better than they are right now. So you could see that OPS crawl near about 900. but yeah, geez, anything you wanted to add before I get to my first team?
No, let's hear the first team.
Yeah, so I imagine, most of these teams you probably would guess what direction I'm going in, but it's actually been a while since we talked about this team. We kind of talked about them. We talked about them probably first couple weeks of the year. They were surprising some people, but the whole time I know I've been waiting for them to, devolve, waiting for them to get under 500, but they're 39-26. They have a better Pythagorean win-loss. The Kansas City Royals are just keep going. They're literally 18 wins away from surpassing last year's win total. It's crazy. It's crazy what they're doing right now. Also to add some context, they're top 10 in both ERA and FIP this year after being disasters on the mound last year and many years before that. How legit do we think they are?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are aspects of them that are very legit and some that I'm kind of still waiting for that regression. As much as I love Cole Reagans, his home run to fly ball ratio is like 3% this year. Seth Lugo, similar story, because he's been, very good ERA this year, but the FIP hasn't quite followed. Which to be fair, his ERA is like below 2, so it's like, or it's 2.13, but yeah, an 8% home run to fly ball ratio for him. Um, the thing that I feel really good about with the Royals is that I said Bobby Witt Jr. was the top 10 player in the league heading into this year, and he has sure performed like at minimum a top 10 player this year. He's probably, I wouldn't say a front runner for American League MVP because Aaron Judge exists, but I mean he's certainly a finalist as of right now. He has a 162 OPS plus. His defense has improved dramatically. It's a lot similar to what it was last year. He still hasn't quite learned how to pull the ball consistently yet, but you know what? I don't even think I can knock him for it because it's not like what he's doing isn't working. How about 7 triples and 11 home runs already? Like that's pretty impressive. 19 stolen bases as well. I would love to run like a span finder search on that, but we're not running that kind of time, unfortunately. And I mean, yeah, I guess we'll have to address the elephant in the room, right? Salvador Perez. He's been turning back the clock back to 2021 mode, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, he's probably going to make another All-Star team this year. He has an 877 OPS, slugging over 500. More importantly, he's walking. He has a 7.8% walk rate. That's double what I'm used to from him at the very least. So that's stunning. All of his batted ball metrics line up with what he's done. Some even say that he's actually getting unlucky. His bat speed is very good. But perhaps most impressively, his framing is not awful. It's at 47th percentile. So the Legit-mus Test on Salvador Perez individually might be very legit because the two biggest things that he's been criticized for throughout his career, he's actually doing pretty well. Or at least to a league average point or close to league average, or at least not, dead last in terms of framing and walking and whatnot. Yeah, a 377 OBP, in the season where he had the best catcher season ever in 2021, he had a league average OBP and we criticized that analysis for that reason, but there's not room for that anymore as of right now. And, it's still early and things could go back to the way we expect. But, the Royals, I'm still a little questionable on their pitching, especially because, like I mentioned, the home run to fly ball ratios just haven't really, I'm not sold yet on that from guys like Reagans, guys like Lugo. So I do want to get the exact number before I give my Legit-mus Test number. Yeah, they have the lowest home run to fly ball ratio in the league, despite only a 42.8% ground ball rate. And to be fair, they play in Kauffman Stadium, which is meant to hold in fly balls. But I still feel like as the summer months, as we warm up, things might change a little bit. So I am going to say the Legit-mus Test on the Royals. I would have given you a much lower score at pretty much any other point in the season. I'll give it like a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And yeah, their road home run to fly ball ratio is 6th lowest in baseball. So they're
Yeah.
still getting a little bit, they're on the fortunate side of things there a little bit too. But yeah, it's just weird. I've been waiting for the fallback, but it just hasn't happened. And even looking at potential reasons of why they will fall back, they're not quite there. Like the fact that their FIP is only 0.11 above their ERA, that's perfectly normal.
Keep going.
They're And I just looked at their WOBA minus xWOBA. They're only ninth luckiest there. So it's not like, I would be more concerned about them if they were like the luckiest or, had the, highest difference between ERA and FIP or something like that. But it just doesn't seem to be the case. They have a top 10 FIP in baseball. I'm sure the home run to fly ball ratio has something to do with that, but that also hurts their offense. Their offense is probably unlucky on the home run to fly ball ratio as well, because they're playing in Kaufman, as we say. So yeah, I mean, it's there's not many analytical reasons for me to think they're going to fall back. It's just the fact of their history and what they have on paper, roster wise. Anything to add before we move on to the next subject?
Yeah, no, let's talk about my second player. So, my second player, I chose Ketel Marte as my first one, as someone who's trending positively. And for this one, I decided I'd go with someone who is trending in the opposite direction. I believe we both had this guy in our top 50s. We both had him top 5 positionally, and he hasn't really been showing out the way that we had hoped he would this year. It's Michael Harris the second. For context, this year he is slashing 244, 290, 351. That's a over 125 point drop off in slugging percentage. His OPS is 641, which is obviously we expected a lot more of him this year. He is still hitting a lot of ground balls, 54% this year. His fly ball rate is just 16%. His pop-up rate has gone up by 1%. And yeah, like he just hasn't been swinging the bat as well. His barrel rate has decreased quite significantly. It's gone from 10% both of his first 2 seasons to 6.4% this year. So that hasn't been as good for him. His chase rate is still very bad. His strikeout rate has gone up 3% this year. So what are your thoughts on Michael Harris second?
Yeah, this is a tough case here. Because yeah, everything kind of under the surface is worse this year, but he's still doing better than his on the surface stats would suggest. We would both agree on that. What's also good is the defense is still looking great. 3 outs above average, +1 arm value, so that doesn't seem to be falling off at all. 73rd percentile sprint speed, which is nice. Not sure what he's looking like on the bases, but he has 8 stolen bases right now, so it seems like he's on track for another 20 stolen base season. So at least the fielding and base running look like they're pretty much in check. Yeah, the expected slugging is down over 80 points, which is not good. The expected WOBA is down 40 points, which obviously is not good. Exit velocity is down significantly. And yeah, like what had me optimistic about Michael Harris coming into this year and why I had him top 30 overall and why I had him as the 3rd best center fielder heading into this year was the underlying numbers looked better in 2023 than it did when he won Rookie of the Year. I was excited about the increases in average exit velocity. I believe decreases in ground ball rate, increases in fly ball rate. That barrel rate stayed about the same at 10%, which is really, really good. So yeah, it's you do kind of worry of like, okay, is he maybe not the hitting threat that we initially thought he was, and maybe he's just more of an all-around player that can maybe get you 3 or 4 wins above replacement, or can he be, because I think he has the potential to be, an MVP candidate based on his talent. But I guess given his age and given the sample size that we have, I can't be too down on him, because also let's not forget we saw some version of this last year. He did have a really, really rough first 6-7 weeks of the year, and then he became, I believe a top 10 player in baseball based on wins above replacement after that. That's why I was so high on him for this year. So it seems like he's having a little bit of a, um, Julio Rodriguez type start where, you're just not good for the first couple of months of the year, every single year. So in terms of legitness, the Legit-mus Test on 10 being his struggles are legit. I will label it a 4 in terms of long term, because I imagine I could still see him being, mid 700s OPS this year with great defense and base running, and that would probably equate to, almost a 4-win player. And I'm not really concerned about that. I just think maybe that's just a down year for him. So seeing how he's a 23-year-old that's already had these struggles before and bounced back from it. So I'm not that worried about him. So yeah, I'll
The
say
uh
I'll
the
say that's a
thing that I
4.
just found on him, in both of his first 2 seasons, his swing rate was around 52%. To be exact, it was 52.4% in 2022, his rookie of the year season, and then it was 52.9% last year, which are both well above league average. But this year it's up to 58.9%. That is the fourth highest among the 162 hitters with at least 750 total pitches seen. He only trails Ezequiel Tovar, Cedar Rafaela, and the aforementioned Salvador Perez. So, I think swinging less is generally better, or at least not swing 58% of the time, because like there is no hitter that is seeing 58% hittable pitches.
Yeah, and if you disagree with that, try watching a Sedan Rafaela
Yeah,
at bat.
yeah.
It's pretty painful. Um, hopefully, hopefully things will get, sorted out in the next couple of years, because it is a tough watch sometimes.
And by the way, you're definitely not seeing 58% hittable pitches when pitchers know how much you swing,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
because pitchers know.
Yeah, they know. Watch a Javier Baez at bat. Watch the slider that's 5 feet out of the zone that's being
Yeah.
swung at on a 1-0 count.
What is
Um,
his swing rate on waste pitches? I would love to know.
that would be nice to know. Um, but yeah, so anything to add before we get into the next team?
Uh, I just want to find this.
All right, let's
We'll
just
go. We'll go. After further research, Javier Baez has only the seventh highest swing rate on waste pitches among the 211 hitters with at least 50 waste pitches seen. The 1 through 7 is Edmundo Sosa, number 1 at 20.6%. Then Jake Berger, Cedar Rafaela, Keibert Ruiz, Jesus Sanchez, Nick Gordon, Javier Baez.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Three
he's
Marlins in the top 6.
he's near the top of the list. And it's how you know that stat's pretty legit.
Yeah,
Waste pitches, that's a real stat. If Javier Baez is near the top, that's gotta be it.
yeah.
So
Three
my
Marlins in the top 6 is crazy.
um that is funny. Yeah. They also, I think the Marlins have the least pitches per plate appearance among any team in baseball. So I guess that does
I
make
would
sense.
I would believe that.
Um, the team the next team I'm talking about, very similar to the Royals, same division. Um, and we talked about them probably like a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago, when they were 19-9 and leading the division. Now they're 41-22 and leading the division with a pretty similar Pythagorean win-loss. Their offense has done better than expected. They are 7th in the MLB in runs scored and 8th in weighted runs created plus. What are you thinking about the legitness of the Guardians?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure the last time I checked, and this could have changed, but it's not really about the fact that they've been doing better on offense. It's actually how they've been doing it. Stephen Vogt it seems to have gone in there and changed the things that previously showed success for the Guardians. So when you think back to 2022, they had one of the worst power offenses in all of baseball. They ranked 28th in ISO at 129. And so far this year in 2024, their ISO is in the top 10. It's actually eighth at 159. So definitely very encouraging to see that the Guardians have change their form of offense to reflect uh what works a lot more. Jose Ramirez is back to hitting home runs. He's at 18 this year. He's slugging 553. Chris, I know that puts a smile on your face. We talked about David Fry last episode, who has been a power threat for them. Josh Naylor has broken out in a power surge. He has 16 home runs this year. Struggled a lot lately, but it's good to see a 256 ISO from him. A 202 BABIP though, that's crazy. That's got to change, right? Even Stephen Kwan has 4 homers in just 37 games. That feels more than he usually has, right? Like he's Stephen Kwan. I mean, he's hitting 371, but he's also slugging 523. Like that's kind of crazy. So I think there is a lot of encouragement to know that the Cleveland Guardians are taking a different approach to offense under Stephen Vogt that better reflects how teams tend to win games in the new era of baseball. Because 2022 was a fun team. They were very young, and it was cool to see them make it as far as they did, and take the Yankees to Game 5. But ultimately, so many singles can only get you so far. So it's good to see. I'm trying to pull up more numbers to see if there's more context we can add to this. But yeah, I mean that's definitely the one thing about Cleveland that makes me think there's a good reason to believe that this could be legit, because yeah, I mean they're actually succeeding at the way of baseball that tends to win games. In 2024, they have an average exit velocity of 89.6 miles per hour. That is the highest that they have had as a team throughout the StatCast era. I'm very curious to see where that ranks in Major League Baseball.
I'll add some analysis. They are top 5 in percentage of batted balls that are pulled fly balls in baseball.
Yep.
They have the highest pulled fly ball rate per batted ball that they've had in the StatCast era. So there definitely is a philosophy change there. It's pretty notable. And the second most that they've had in a season was 2018. So it is well above what they were used to. And it's also their 7.6% of their batted balls have been pulled fly balls this year. Last year, that was at 5.2%. So it's increased percentage point wise 2.4%, but like it's almost 50% higher than it was last year in terms of dividing it by the original thing. But yeah, that seems to be the case. I know Jose Ramirez is contributing a lot to that. He's been pulling a lot of fly balls, which is why
Yeah.
he has 18 home runs.
Josh Naylor, I would imagine, is doing the same.
Yeah, and by the way, Josh, this is like a very kind of under the surface nerd thing, but Naylor has a very similar OPS plus to what he had the previous 2 years, but in an extremely different way. Last year he hit 308 with a 132 OPS plus. This year he's hitting 224 with a 124 OPS plus.
Yep.
He's just slugging. He's just
I mean that's what the Guardians are doing now.
Yeah.
39.2% of their batted balls total are pulled. That is tied for 9th highest in the league. So yeah, I mean it does seem kind of like they are changing up how they identify themselves on offense. And you know what? Maybe we start having Stephen Vogt, which by the way, in 2022, when they last made the playoffs, they had the second lowest pull rate in the majors. Now they're 10th highest. So I mean, if you want to get real analytical with it, I know that we have kind of hated on the Manager of the Year award in the past, but maybe there's like legit grounds for Stephen Vogt here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because you can see the actual change, and it's also a first year manager, which helps. So
Yeah.
it makes it seem pretty legit. But yeah, and
Yeah.
and
So
to add to that point, this is the highest fly ball rate that they've had in a StatCast era season. And they're still only 20th in baseball in that, but still they're making progress.
progress doesn't matter what everyone else is doing, it's what you're doing. Yeah, I'll give the Cleveland Guardians legitness a 8 out of 10 because I like the changes they made on offense. I know the pitching has been a little rough for them this year. They've lost Shane Bieber to injury. They lost Gavin Williams to injury. They have not had Logan Allen at times, or I think, or no, not Logan Allen. They have not had Who else did they lose to injury? They lost there's another guy that I'm missing.
Um, McKenzie's healthy, right?
He's been healthy. He hasn't been great, but he's been healthy at the very least.
Yeah.
They lost Gavin Williams, they lost Shane Bieber. Um, Tanner Bybee hasn't been the same. They've had to have like Ben Lively starting games,
Their
Carrasco starting games for them. So like,
their bullpen has been lights out. And
yeah, I mean, Emmanuel Clase making me regret not having him. Or no, did I? I don't think did I have him in my top 10 relievers
I
this
don't
year?
believe so, but MLB
I don't
Network
think I
also
did.
did not have him top.
Yeah,
So you weren't alone in that boat.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, relief pitcher.
I think my relief pitcher list is aging the worst of all my positional rankings from
Well,
this
we
offseason.
we knew that was going to happen, though.
Oh, for sure. There's
I'm
so
sure
much
mine is
turnover.
horrific.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Tanner Scott has not been the number 3 reliever in the league this year.
no, not with his
Um,
18% walk rate or whatever it is. Yeah,
yeah.
the Guardians have the Guardians bullpen has the lowest ERA by over half a run
Yeah.
and the lowest FIP by more than zero point 0.4. So the Cleveland bullpen is in a league of their own.
Not only are they legit, I think they might be the best AL Central team that we've seen probably since the 2015 Royals or maybe the 2016 Cleveland team.
Yeah, for
Actually, no, that's a lie. 2017.
2017, yeah.
Yeah, that team is better. Yeah, I will say they're the best AL Central team since 2017.
Yeah, yeah, for
That's
sure.
my
For
hot
sure.
take.
And I was about to have that thought of like, imagine if they
Even
had
I'll even put them above the 100 win Twins.
oh yeah, because that was a fake year anyway.
Yeah,
Um
the
the
team
fact
that
that
set the record for most home runs in a
they hit
season.
they hit 1,200 home runs that year. That just doesn't that's not a real thing. Um
Yeah,
yeah, but I had that I had the intrusive thought of like, oh, what if they had, Francisco Lindor this year? But they're, Jimenez is doing pretty well. So, and
yeah,
I'm not hating on Lindor. It's just like the Guardians did pretty well in that trade.
they
Um,
did.
but but yeah, yeah, anything or yeah, do we want to move on to the third player?
Yeah, let's move on to the third player. Chris, do you know who leads all qualified starting pitchers in strikeout rate minus walk rate?
Do I know that? Is that Chris Sale?
It is not Chris Sale. I believe he's second.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not Chris Sale, but it's someone not on my radar, I would
We were
imagine.
just talking about 2019. Think 2019.
Ooh, well, it's not Garrett Cole. He's not pitched.
No,
It's not Verlander. Um, it's not Jacob DeGrom.
no.
Not Hyunjin Ryu.
It's not
Um,
Hyunjin
I'm
Ryu.
I'm going through I'm going through the Cy Young finalists. Um,
I don't think he was a finalist, but his career year was 2019 as a pitcher.
it's not World Series MVP Steven Strasburg, unfortunately.
No,
Um, career year 2019. Goodness gracious.
I could boil it down even more, but it's going to give it away.
Oh God.
Think
2019.
of think of one particular split.
Oh yeah, Mr. Flaherty, Jack
Jack
Flaherty.
Flaherty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jack Flaherty leads the majors currently in strikeout rate minus walk rate. He's hovering just below 30%. I want to say it's 29.8% right now. Um, the home run rate is high, but Jack Flaherty is a fly ball pitcher. He's in his first year with the Detroit Tigers, and they had to replace Eduardo Rodriguez this year, and I think Jack Flaherty has kind of done just that. So what are we thinking with him?
Yeah, there's some real fun stuff about him. I'm looking, more at what he's doing. I mean, 3.22 ERA, that's always going to be good. 2.60 expected ERA, but gives up a lot of homers, so that's, not or 2.70 FIP. Jeez. So it's not even like his home runs are dragging him down that much. He actually kind of has an average home run rate. Um, yeah, and like it doesn't seem completely random because it seems like, as much as we kind of like don't really acknowledge the Tigers that much in terms of like, I don't know, player development, they seem to be doing somewhat
It's
well with.
crazy that they are doing more with Jack Flaherty than the Orioles could.
Yeah, weird. Very, very weird. Um, But yeah, like the Tigers have done decent at developing guys. I think at least from a pitching front, like Reese Olson has done pretty well this year. I know he had a crazy blow up start, but that was a decent fifth outing from him. Tarek
Does he still not have a win yet this year?
possibly. I think he might have one. He might have one.
Look at wins, but Chase Olsen is 1-7 with a 3.43 ERA and a 3.42 expected ERA.
Yeah, so his days in the rotation are numbered, but but also Tarek Skubal is like he's making my Cy Young pick look very, very good this year. But
Mhm.
he was the guy who I don't think got drafted very high, but just was developed within the Tiger system and has been just an absolute menace for him. And now we have Jack Flaherty, who has transformed his career with Detroit, which is really fun. His four seam velocity is slightly up, but not anything that I would say is really significant. It's up 0.6 miles per hour. Trying to look at kind of what the analysis is. His pitch usage doesn't seem to have changed really much at all. Doesn't look like the spin rate is much different. If anything, it's down from what it was, at least on the four seam and knuckle curve front. So yeah, you do have to wonder what's going on there. But yeah, strikeout minus walk rate is up near 30%, which is crazy. Contact against him looks somewhat similar. It's really just, yeah, as you mentioned, the strikeouts and walks. So it makes me kind of curious, what his change in whiff of like called strike and whiff rate is, because that's the closest to like the underlying numbers that we can get in terms of strikeout rate. Or actually before that, let me pause this before I'm rambling into nothing. Yeah, I just took a gander up and down his Baseball Savant page, and there's really nothing that's changed outside of the results, outside of, strikeout rate, walk rate, whiff rate, and chase rate. Those are the big things that have changed. But his pitch usage is about the same. Pitch velocity is about the same on every pitch. Pitch movement is about the same on every pitch. So you really wonder what's going on there. Must
Could be like
be,
location.
yeah, possibly location. We mentioned off recording that his in zone percentage is lower than it was last year. So that doesn't even explain the walk rate. What explains the walk rate is the fact that more hitters are chasing out of the zone against him. So yeah, it's weird. It's kind of inexplicable from me. It's something that probably the Detroit Tigers organization, knows about, but the public doesn't really know too much about. So yeah, I can't really put my finger on it. However, because he's had past success before and we know what he was capable of 5 years ago, I do have to think it's more legit than if it was, a guy who had been struggling his entire career. So yeah, in terms of the the Legit-mus Test here, I'll label it I'll label it a 6 out of 10. I think it'll be more legit if we see this over, 150 innings or so. But just because I haven't found anything that's really changed from last year to this year outside of the results, I can't completely buy into it. But the numbers are there and they're legit. So I gotta at least give him a 6 there. Yeah, on to the final team of the segment. This is a team who has been kind of a standard for success in MLB for almost a decade now. But yeah, slow start. The last time we talked about them, as it, dedicated a segment to them was probably a little bit over a month ago, or even beyond that, maybe a couple months ago, when they started 7-15, and we figured, okay, it's a rough start, but they'll get back to be contender status pretty soon. But hasn't really happened. They're still 5 games below 500. They're 30-35 right now. Their team ERA plus is 94, and they've kind of been known for having pitching success. What have you been thinking about the Houston Astros, and how legit do you think their struggles are?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to count them out just because, like you mentioned, they have been such uh, an example of a well-run organization for close to a decade now. But I mean, I feel like we're starting to see the effects of post Jeff Lunau, uh, and post James Click, because they haven't really developed anyone in a while. I mean, they've been running off of the same core for quite some time now. You know, it's been Altuve, Bregman, uh, Tucker, Alvarez, plus, you know, Verlander. The bullpen has not been what we hoped it would be, and that was their, you know, what we kind of saw as maybe their biggest strength coming into this season. Um, but their bullpen, you know, Hader has gotten BABIP'd quite a bit, I believe, but you know, the ERA is not where you want it to be. Brian Abreu has just flat out not been good this year. He's walked 18 batters, I think, in like 33 innings, I want to say. Um, so there is a lot of cause for concern when you look at the pitching, both starting and relief. Just to give you some context on the bullpen, the Astros have a bullpen ERA of 3.59, which isn't bad, but a FIP of 4.09, a home run per nine of 1.0, which is one of the worst in the majors. So that there is some cause for concern there. The home run to fly ball ratio for the Astros out of the bullpen is at 10 per, is that, what is it at? Hang on. It's at 11.4%, which is 23rd in baseball. So that's that. They did just lose Kyle Tucker to the IL, but I don't think it's anything serious. So that's, you know, that is good. The legitness of their struggles honestly might have some validity to them, because when you look at the rotation that they're trotting out right now, it's Justin Verlander, who very clearly doesn't have it anymore and hasn't really had it since 2022, and even then there was clear signs of regression. Framber Valdez, who, you know, we praise him for his ground ball abilities, but even those have kind of gone down in the last couple of years. You know, it's been kind of exclusively his sinker, and everything else has not been the ground ball effectiveness that we've come to know from him, right? I mean, his ground ball rate, it's still 65%. It's still very good.
He's not
But
striking out a lot of
he's
guys.
not striking out a lot of guys. He has an average exit velocity of 92 miles an hour. That is third percentile in the majors, which is going to lead to a lot of hits. Jeremy Pena has not developed the way that they'd hoped that he would have by now. Who did they have? I mean, they just lost Christian Javier and Jose Urquidy to Tommy John surgery, which is very unfortunate. Luis Garcia's due back maybe this year. Lance McCullers, who knows? Yeah, there might be a lot of validity to this, because it's hard to see who they're getting back, and it's honestly hard to see what kind of trade value that people have, because everyone that they previously had in their farm system, they pretty much traded for Verlander. I mean, who's the number one prospect in the organization right now? Like, I don't even know, to be honest.
Right. Yeah.
Bryce Matthews, who is a shortstop in high A, and I don't think that's a guy that you really need to be trading right now.
Right. Yeah. And with Houston, you know, you would expect, even if today's not the day, there is a day that will come where, you know, their reign of, you know, quote unquote terror will end, because you know, credit to them, they've been all in for a while here, and they've been win now
Mhm.
for a really long time. And a lot of the time, most organizations, their competitive window has already closed. You know, if it would have started in 2015 or 2017, that window would have closed by now. But because of, you know, financial commitments, and also commitments to getting rid of prospect capital to get, you know, current MLB players, that has you know, that has kept them in the mix for, you know, an extended period of time. That was most notable when they traded away two of their top prospects for Justin Verlander last year. You know, and who helped them kind of get to the playoffs, and you know, marginally helped them in the playoffs last year. Uh, but yeah, when you go all in, there's sometimes going to be a bit of fallout, or, you know, we saw this with the, you know, 2019 Red Sox. We remember what the farm system looked like in 2019 for the Red Sox, because they had traded so much of it away, and they got a World Series out of it. Luckily for the Astros, they've gotten two World Series out of this. But yeah, like, you know, they kind of have to play catch up from a, from a farm system angle, and seems like their development has not been fantastic. And, they've gone through a couple GMs since the whole scandal. So yeah, like under the surface there, it's looking like their time will be up at some point. Whether it's now or not is remains a question, but with how they've succeeded for many, many years, like you said, you can never quite count them out, but there's more reason to than there probably has been for a very long time.
I think there's a very good chance we could see, maybe not this year, but going forward, maybe a hard fall off from this franchise, because you look at the things that have been done since the 2022 World Series. The best thing that they've done, I would say, is probably extend Jose Altuve, because, not even just, I mean, first of all, he's still an effective player, but also like, that's the heart and soul of your franchise, and losing him would really represent a lot of uh, turnover within the organization if he is gone. Because they did extend Yordan Alvarez, but that was before the 2022 World Series. That was in the James Click era. But signing Jose Abreu has turned out to be a very, very bad signing for them. Trading for Justin Verlander has probably set their farm system back quite a lot for a guy that is currently in his age 41 season,
Yeah.
and not performing very well. And how much time is a free agent after this year? So, that was very much a win now move, a one last win now move, which they probably didn't need to do because, they still had won twice in this era. It is, and Verlander does have a 3.63 ERA, which is fine, but the FIP numbers have not reflected that. That's at 5.14. And I don't know, who have they really developed since, I don't know, since the pandemic? I know we're going back to that unit of measurement there, but Kyle Tucker was kind of already breaking out around that time. Bregman was very much, he had already been extended. Jordan had already broken out. He had won Rookie of the Year. Who is the best Astros player that has come up from 2021 on? It's probably Framber Valdez.
Yeah, and even he sort of started in 2020.
Yeah, and I mean, like the trading Miles Straw for Yainer Diaz was very effective. And he looks like the catcher of the future right now, but it's still not a guy that I'm putting on multiple World Series titles right now. That is a home run to take the lead for the Phillies in the bottom of the seventh inning. It was a lefty. I'm trying to figure out who hit it. That was David Dahl is on the Phillies.
Yeah. Quite
Oh wow, yeah, I'm sure the distance was 205 feet. Thank you for that, ESPN. 108 miles per hour, 10 degrees. That's 205 feet. That's barely out at a little league field for sure.
Yes, indeed. I remember very, very small tangent, but I remember I played MLB 2K13 and they measured the distance based on where it landed. And one time I hit the foul pole, so it landed in the field and it was like a 250-foot home run according to
Yeah.
MLB 2K13. But
Yeah.
so maybe it was that. But but yeah,
Um,
with Houston also, part of my concern is there it's going to be hard. It would be hard for them to spend out of this in an off season. They have the
mhm.
third highest payroll in baseball currently, at 249 million, according to Spot which seems pretty reliable. But yeah, like I think, and we've seen this with a lot of ownership groups. And I feel like this would be especially true in Houston, which isn't necessarily considered, a top market. There's probably going to be, if the team doesn't look like it can be a championship contender, that's a team where the owner is going to be like, no, I'm not going to invest $200 million in this team. We've seen that with the Red Sox before. So, and I'm sure there's other examples of that as well. But I remember, I think the Mariners went through that back in like the late 2010s when they went through a fire sale because they figured they wouldn't be competitive. But yeah, the Astros could go through that
Yeah.
because they're spending this team because they believe in it. But if the belief runs out, and there's more and more reason to have that lack of belief, then maybe things will go downhill from a payroll perspective.
And I'm not ready to pronounce them dead yet, because if you remember 2005, the Houston Chronicle pronounced them dead in early June, and they went on to appear in the World Series as a wild card team. And you really never know with this franchise. And not only that, but no one in the AL West is really running away with this division, despite how flawed the Astros are. They're only what, like 6.5 games out or something like that.
Yeah,
five and a half. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're 5 games under 500, 5.5 behind the Mariners. So, they could go on a run at any time. It does seem like they're going to let Alex Bregman walk in free agency this offseason. Which on one hand, you could say, yeah, he might get more money than the Astros are comfortable handing out. But on the other hand, who's going to play third for them next year? Because it's not going to be someone as good as Alex Bregman.
Yeah, exactly. And they already have a big hole at first base too.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing they need to do, I think, is sign Kyle Tucker to an extension, because that's a guy that's irreplaceable on the free agent market anytime soon, except for Juan Soto, but I highly doubt the Astros are going to shell out that kind of money.
Yeah, I would agree, especially given their lack of financial flexibility right now, or what I would imagine would be their lack of financial flexibility. But yeah,
so I'll give an unorthodox answer here. This might be a cop out, but I think I'll give the Astros struggles a legitness score of 8 out of 10 in terms of the bigger picture, given the next few years, but a lesser score for 2024 specifically.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I think this is the last year.
Yeah,
and we're seeing that play out in front of our eyes right now.
Yeah, there's that can happen. That can happen in teams with competitive windows. I mean, not that it's a parallel with the sport, but I remember like the 2019 Patriots, when I was watching them, like it just felt like things were kind of ending. There was an era that was ending, and that was obviously the year after. That was Brady's last year with the Patriots. Could be that sort of energy with Houston. All right. Anything more before we get into players to highlight?
No, let's do it.
All right. So now we will start with the lows. So we end with the highs, starting with our Sunday, June 9, 2024 edition of Slightly Alarming Statistics. He's been barreling up the ball way less.
He's not missing bats, he's not getting the ball on the ground, and people are hitting it in the air more.
It's been so bad. He is getting
slightly alarming.
Yeah, so for my slightly alarming today, the Yankees have been one of the best teams in baseball, definitely the best team in the American League. But they do have a problem like the Astros at first base, because Anthony Rizzo has been struggling quite a bit. Since May 15th, Anthony Rizzo is slashing 153, 189, 176 for a 365 OPS and a 6 weighted runs created plus, and also a negative 0.9 FWAR. Among the 175 qualifiers since May 15th, he ranks 7th lowest in batting average, 2nd lowest in on-base percentage, 3rd and the lowest in slugging, OPS, weighted runs created plus, and FWAR. His average exit velocity in the span is down to 85.4 miles per hour. That is the 11th lowest among the 156 hitters with at least 50 batted balls throughout this span. Anthony Rizzo also has a chase rate of 39.8% in the span. That is the 8th highest among the 127 hitters with at least 150 pitches seen outside the zone throughout the span. Rizzo has a 16.2% line drive rate in the span. That is tied for the 14th lowest on the aforementioned list of 156. He also has a sweet spot rate of 21.6%, the 5th lowest on that same list. Before this span, Anthony Rizzo had a ground ball rate of just 33.3%, but in this span, it is up to 52.7%. It is up nearly 20% in this span. He has particularly struggled against breaking balls and off-speed pitches. Against them in the span, he is hitting 109 and slugging 130. That 109 batting average ranks 12th lowest among the 224 hitters with at least 25 plate appearances ending on breaking balls and off-speed pitches. His 130 slugging ranks tied for 9th lowest. and his expected batting average and expected slugging against them are also both sub 200. So Anthony Rizzo has really struggled at the plate lately. He's not struggling in making contact, but the kind of contact he's been making has been some of the worst in his career. So for that reason, he is getting a slightly alarming from me.
Yeah, Anthony Rizzo. He's getting a
alarming. Slightly alarming.
Yeah, and I feel like this hasn't happened for a good bit, but we do have an
We're
overlap.
doubling up. Yeah, you made a face like we were doubling up when I started.
Yeah, and also very, very similar metrics that we use because it's that kind of glaring because yeah, it's very obvious what his problem is, and it's batted ball distribution. Yeah, I used a 25 game span that went back to May 11th. His numbers weren't as bad, but I figured since it's longer, I would go with that. In his last 25 games, he's hitting 163 with a 396 OPS. Yeah, sixth lowest average, second lowest on base percentage, lowest slugging, lowest OPS, as you mentioned. Same with this span. Out of 173 hitters with 300 plus pitches seen in this span, his expected batting average is ninth lowest, expected slugging is the lowest, and expected WOBA is the lowest. Average exit velocity is very low, as you mentioned. Ground ball rate went from 32% before the span to 50% in the span. Line drive rate went from 30% to 17%. Also has a 13% pop-up rate in the span, which is 14th highest out of 203. And that sweet spot rate went from 34% to 20%. And out of 203 hitters, his sweet spot rate is fourth lowest. So that is why from both of us, Anthony Rizzo is getting a
slightly alarming.
Yeah, and now we will go from the lows to the highs, where we are talking players or subjects that are outperforming expectations. Now on to our Sunday, June 9, 2024 edition of How About That?
He's striking out less, walking more, and he's also making better contact.
Turning into a strikeout machine just out of nowhere.
He's been excellent all around this year.
And he is getting a...
How about that?
Yeah, this is going to look like a real Homer episode for me, going with a Yankees player for slightly alarming and a Red Sox player for how about that. But we haven't talked about Tanner Houck yet, and I feel like we definitely need to because he has completely transformed himself as a pitcher this year, at least in terms of his stuff. And he has become a legitimate ace for the Red Sox. In 2024, he has a 1.91 ERA and a 2.21 FIP in 85 innings pitched. He has an 8.89 strikeouts per nine, 1.59 walks per nine, and 0.21 home runs per nine, which gives him the best FIP among qualifying starters, and his 2.9 F4 is the most in the majors. He has been the most valuable starting pitcher in the majors this year, according to Fangraphs, which I'm sure everybody saw coming, considering he didn't have a spot in the rotation until Lucas Giolito went down this year. Houck throws his slider 41.9% of the time this year, as per usual with him. But this year, it is averaging 41.4 inches of downward movement, which is 2.7 inches above the league average, and 17.1 inches of horizontal movement, which is a whopping 8.9 inches above the league average. For what that means, Tanner Houck has thrown 289 sliders this year, with at least 40 inches of downward movement and at least 15 inches of horizontal movement. 289 sliders. No one else in the majors has thrown more than 126 such pitches. Opponents have hit 171 against his slider. They've slugged 220 against it, and it has produced a run value of 15, the most of any pitch throughout the majors. It also has a 2.8% run value per 100, which is tied for the third most among the 73 pitchers with at least 50 plate appearances ending on sliders. His secondary pitch has been his sinker. He throws that 30% of the time. His sinker has a ground ball rate of 54% as per usual with sinkers, and it averages 31.4 inches of downward movement, which is 7.9 inches above the league average, and 16.5 inches of horizontal movement, which is 1.6 inches above the league average. He has thrown 241 sinkers with at least 30 inches of downward movement and 15 inches of horizontal movement, the most of any pitcher in the majors, just like his slider. And lastly, Houck has ditched his four-seam fastball and his cutter to develop a splitter that he has used as his third pitch. The talk with Tanner Houck for years was he needs a third pitch. He has a four-seam fastball and a slider. He needs a third pitch. Well, he's developed a sinker, and he has upped the usage on his splitter, throwing it 11.4% of the time last year, 24.2% of the time this year. His splitter averages 38.3 inches of downward movement, 4.4 inches above the league average, and 13.6 inches of horizontal movement, 1.2 inches above the league average. He has thrown 269 splitters with at least 35 inches of downward movement and 10 plus inches of horizontal movement. That is the most in the majors. The next most is 139. He's at 269. Opponents have hit 183 against his splitter and slugged 247. All three of his primary pitches have an opponent slugging below 300. So all of Tanner Houck's stuff has been profoundly unique this year. In terms of movement, he is doing all of it more than anyone else on all of his pitches. That's something I've never seen before. The closest I can tell you is Christopher Sanchez, but even that was not as extreme. Andrew Bailey has completely changed this man as a pitcher, and he is looking like a legitimate ace and possibly the All-Star Game starter for the American League.
Yeah, Tanner Houck.
How about that?
Yeah, he would be a good Legit-mus person to talk about. But yeah, and if you aren't a Red Sox fan and aren't familiar with him, watch one of his starts. It's pretty dazzling to watch. Like no matter what the result is, the movement on the pitches is going to be very fun to watch. And he's one of those guys where even if he's not, the best long term, like he's one of those guys where you watch him and you're like, how do MLB hitters hit any pitches? But my how about that comes from lovely San Diego. It is Matt Waldron.
Yes, the knuckleballer.
Famously, the semi-knuckleballer who doesn't throw it all the time, but throws it more than any of his pitches. But he's doing really well. He, in his last 6 starts, has a 1.78 ERA and 2.06 FIP in 35 1/3 innings pitched. And out of 91 qualifiers in the span, his ERA ranks 10th and FIP ranks 6th. Overall, among all pitchers, his FWAR in the span ranks 1st. Also, out of 102 pitchers with 400 plus pitches thrown in the span, Matt Waldron's expected batting average against is 3rd lowest, expected slugging against is 2nd lowest, and expected WOBA against is the lowest in baseball out of 102. His strikeout rate has gone from, and a lot of this has to do with him missing a lot of bats, his strikeout rate has gone from 19% before the span to 29% in this span, and his strikeout minus walk rate has gone from 11% before the span to 23% in the span. And out of 91 qualifiers, his strikeout rate ranks 12th and strikeout minus walk rate ranks 9th. Also has lower quality of contact against him in a good way. His sweet spot rate against has gone from 40% before the span to 31% in this span. Also, his percentage of batted balls at launch angles of 40 degrees or higher has gone from 18% to 26%. Out of 146 pitchers with 50 plus batted balls against in this span, his percentage of batted balls at 40 degrees or higher ranks 10th. And that's important because those are very non-competitive fly balls or pop-ups that are being hit against him. And that's shown by the fact that hitters are 0 for 23 against him on those batted balls. Along with that, Matt Waldron only has a 3.4% barrel rate against him in the span, which is 10th lowest out of 146. And he's been doing it largely on that knuckleball, as you mentioned. He's been throwing his knuckleball 41% of the time in the span, and that has a 161 expected batting average and 217 expected slugging against it. And out of 119 pitchers to throw any pitch 150 plus times in the span, his expected batting average against his knuckleball ranks 9th, and his expected slugging against it ranks 4th. So Matt Waldron for the Padres has been a shining light in that rotation and done really well over his last 6 starts, resulting in a 1.78 ERA and 2.06 FIP. Matt Waldron.
How about that?
All right, so that does it.
You'll love to see a knuckleballer in the big 2024.
Yeah. In the era of spin rate, I mean, am I right? You got a guy. The ball doesn't even spin. They're talking about the spin rate, but this guy, he doesn't even spin. The nerds must hate this guy, right? They must hate him because his spin rate's so low.
When Chris Collinsworth shifts into baseball.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just generic, 54-year-old in a sports booth. That's
Yeah.
that's just but yeah, no, the nerds hate this guy. He only has a 248 RPM on his knuckleball. as opposed to 3,000, which is
As
what it
opposed to
should be.
3,000. Yeah.
Um but but yeah, so that does it for players to highlight. Um On to Savant Trivia. Fifth time we're doing
Yes.
it. Third time this is
Fifth
Daniel's game.
fifth
Excited.
time.
Excited for it.
So I am bringing back an ARR classic for today's Savant Trivia. This is the first time we've played this game on ARR on the show on recording, but it is not the first time we've played this game. Chris and I have been doing this since 2020, going back to the 2020 playoffs that we were mentioning earlier. We are playing one of our favorite games. It is Guess That Expected Batting Average.
Yay.
So the
Love
rules
that.
for this one are pretty simple, Chris. I'm going to show you a batted ball that was hit in the last week of Major League Baseball. You are going to tell me the expected batting average. Because this is a game we are familiar with, there are no lifelines that I put on this one. I apologize, but we're veterans of this one at this point. So I think we know, we have a feel for how this works. And I will say, there's no gimmies here. I did not give you any 1000s or any 010 pop-ups.
All right.
But the way this is going to work is that there's a scoring system, and we're gonna go golf mode. So we're going for the lowest possible score here. So if your guess is more than 100 points away from the correct expected batting average, that is 10 points. If it is between 100 to 51 points away, that is 5 points. If it is between 50 to 31 points away, it is 3 points. If it is 30 to 11 points away, it is 2 points. And then if it is 10 to 1 points away, it is 0 points. And if you get it on the dot, that's negative 10 points. And the goal is 20 points or lower. I have 8 batted balls pulled up here. And we'll score as we go. So I need screen share permission here.
Oh, correct. Right.
Yeah. Got it?
Yep.
All right. So here is number 1. Shout out to my Dark Horse Rookie of the Year pick, Justin Henry Malloy.
All right. There's a deep drive to left field. Okay, that could be tricky because it is pulled, and sometimes it'll be confusing. It'll be like, oh yeah, that was a home run. That was a surefire home run. It must have a high expected batting average. But sometimes, because it didn't go a very far distance comparative to the rest of the field, this definitely is a tough one. So it wasn't pulled down the line, so I can't imagine it's that low of an expected batting average, but I still think it's below 500. I'm gonna throw out a guess of 310. 310 is gonna be my guess.
That is a rough start. The correct answer was 630. Because of the distance. It was gone in 29 out of 30 ballparks. Believe it or not, it was not out at Coors Field. That was the one. So 10 points on the board, but that's all right. Because we're just getting started. All right. So next one. All right. The next one.
Well, that's a very, very slow roller. Slow rollers can be higher than expected because
I will say, I'll give you a brief hint here and say the hit distance was 1 foot.
Okay. Yeah, obviously the low exit velocity there. If that's hit to the third base side, though, that hit probability definitely goes up, especially for a faster player. So it's still pretty low, I would imagine. I'm gonna say 170.
The answer, I believe, was 290. So
Oh,
we are at 20 points.
all right, we've reached the goal.
Yeah, so you got to get one.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all right. That's all right. I mean, I'm just guessing the point system, so it could just be on me.
Well, it's been a while since we played this game.
That is true. All right. Number 3. All right. Batted ball number 3.
All right. Seems like a liner. Could you rewind that and play that again, please?
Of course.
Yeah. I don't know when that's going to be an out. Um, it was hit like, yeah, I'm guessing that's got to be high. I'm going to say 820.
Oh no. The answer that we were looking for was 480.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it hit more on a fly than I thought?
Yeah, it's like a line out half the time.
Okay, yeah, I guess it was hit like right where the right fielder would be.
Yeah. I gave you all hard ones, I will say.
Yeah,
Like none of these are particularly easy, so I apologize. But that's this game.
that is the nature of the game, the nature of the beast.
All right. Number 4.
We got Hunter Renfro. So we don't know what it could be. All right, that's another line drive. Pretty well in front of the center fielder.
Mhm.
I'll say it's in the sixes. I'll give it a 660.
The answer we were looking for was 830.
Okay.
So we are at maximum points right now
Yeah.
after the first half. So I think a streak's coming though. I'm feeling it.
I'm sure. I think we're a second half ball club here.
We are a second, yeah, for sure. Finish strong here. Number 5. Ha-Sung Kim at the dish.
Yep. Yeah. So if that's in the gap, that will be a hit. It just depends how much movement will happen or how much movement is required for that to happen. It wasn't in the air that long. I'll guess 280.
Okay, we got in the range. The answer was 210. So that is 5 points. You're up to 45 now.
All right.
Hey, we got within 100.
There we go. Progress for sure.
Exactly. All right, this one was okay. That's the number we're looking for. Cool. All right, this is the first career hit for Jamie Westbrook.
Ooh. That's lined kind of around the distance of where the outfielders would play. But it was hit pretty hard. That's a tough one. I would imagine it's somewhere in the middle there. Um, I'll guess 540.
You were within 10. It is
Oh, look at that.
530.
Nice.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Hey, that's impressive. You were only 10 away. So that's 2 points, right? Or is it? No, it's 0, right? Yeah, that is 0 points.
All right.
That's impressive.
Bringing my average down.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, the answer was 530. You guessed 540. So that's pretty good. All right. Number 7. Seven out of 8. You are at 45 right now, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's technically impossible to go under 20, but
Correct.
that's all right.
Yeah. Sharp ground ball. Obviously, since there's a semi shift, not hard to get. So yeah, I would have to imagine that's a hard hit ball.
It was.
Probably
I believe it was 97 miles an hour.
like around 0 degrees launch angle wise. So that could be higher. and ground balls in general, especially hard hit ground balls, can have a decent, batting average for them. Not high slugging percentage, but high batting average. So I'll say that's 310.
310. The answer is 400, so that is within 100 points. So you're up
Alright.
to 50 points now, heading into the last batted ball. What is the answer I'm looking for? It is that. Okay.
Yeah. So we are on a streak. A streak
Yeah,
just
we're
happened.
we're improving because this is a hard game.
Yeah.
This is probably the hardest game that any of us have given the other, but it's also a classic. All right, last one is Tyro Estrada.
That's a line drive that's rarely ever going to be caught, I feel like. Unless an infielder's like right there. I'm gonna guess 900 flat.
900 flat. The answer we were looking for was 940.
All right.
So that is 3 points. All right, Chris, you finished with 53 points today. Which was, it could have just been me giving you tough ones, could have just been a tough performance. But you know what? You improved throughout the game, so that's what counts.
Yeah, in the if we're doing the custom date range, like on Fangraphs, 13 points in my last 4 guesses. So
yeah,
not too bad.
Yeah.
Not too bad to end it.
And you almost got one too, like outright.
True. That is true. All right, so that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We were talking baseball kind of whenever. And yeah, fun episode, tangentially based, I guess. And got to introduce a new segment. So pretty fun. If you are listening on an Apple Podcast or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens and watch, see if you could do better on the expected batting average game, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Also follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show on Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time where we will be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball. Once again, see you then.
This conversation is over.